Hi there, welcome back to my channel. I am Amira of the Little Mushroom Cap, and today I have a fun tutorial for you, which is going to be Scrappy Quilt Zipper Pouch, and we are going to make this beautiful pouch perfect for gifts. And if you're ready for it, let's get started. I'm going to teach you how to do different panels, and it's going to be so much fun. If you are new here, don't forget to click the subscribe button. I have more tutorials on the YouTube channel. For this project, I am using scrappy batting, so that means I am not really measuring on what size I'm going to be making my panels. And if you're making more than just 2 panels, you may want to have a certain size, but don't worry too much about being so exact because we are going to have to trim it off after we finish the panel. So for this, I'm just using something about 8 times 10 inch. 8 times 10 meaning the width is 10 inch, and that makes a perfect size for a pouch, which in this case I'm making all my Quilt Zipper panels into pouches. So if you're making pouches, make sure that you cut 2 pieces of the same size. It doesn't have to be exact again, but it has to be around the same size so that you can actually trim them to be the exact size for both of them. So let's say in this case I have 2 of these the same size and then 2 of them the other size. You're also going to need a small rotary cutter, a small ruler by the side of your sewing machine because we're going to trim it off as we go. So it's also useful to have a scissor. So for this first one, I am going to show you how to make the method 1, which is the log cabin blocks. And you're going to start with one of the panels. Of course, you're going to make 2 panels for this. So if I'm making a pouch with the log cabin, I'm making 2 panels with the log cabin. I also put all my scraps into trays and I organized them by length. Some of the middle size, some of the shorter size, and some of the longer ones in different piles. So I'm going to start with a large square. This is considered large, but it can be small from your scraps. So you want to put that in the center. That's a center square. And then you're going to start piecing on the sides using some strips. So it's either whatever size. I'm not measuring anything. I'm just basically using anything what I already have in my scrap box. And we're going to put it right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch away from it. So at the end of the first block, whatever shorter, you're going to have to stop and cut your thread. So I have this cutter on my machine, but if you don't have it, simply just pull it out and cut your thread. And then I'm going to cut the leftover pieces and put it back in my scrap pile. And you can also piece together some of the pieces that you've pieced together before, just to make longer pieces. So sometimes we all end up with very small scraps, and in order for us to use this for the quilts as you go, you want to piece them together first to make a longer piece that you can work with. So I simply just go around the first square and I'm working by round. In all of these cases, I'm working all by round, just simply looking at the edge, the raw edge, and then piecing it together with the new strips. Again, if you cut it just close by, it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, this is going to be covered, so you can see that it's not perfect. That's okay, because this is going to be covered by the other strips that's going to cover it next. So you want to piece this as you go along, and since this is a log cabin style, you are going to go around the center square with more strips and more strips. Now, as we go through the process, you'll find that you will need longer pieces. And if you don't have any, just simply stop and piece some of the shorter ones into longer pieces. That's what I do. Don't worry too much about it. Just mix and match and make it longer. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, the same size. You can just trim it later and it won't be observed anyway after you finish with the seams. So you want to go ahead and round all the way, and when you're near the edge, you want to make sure that you're piecing with larger pieces that can cover the whole area of the batting. So as you complete the final edges, you want to make sure that all of your fabrics is covering the batting, and you're done with it. Let's get trimming. So for this, you want to be trimming as big as you can so that you don't waste as much. So in this case, you might have your log cabin a little bit skewed, but that's okay because we're not really going to be worried about that too much. All what we need is just to cover the whole batting. But if that really is something that's bothering you, you can actually make sure that you put the first piece, the center square, parallel to one of the edges so that you don't get a skewed log cabin at the end. So I am simply trimming off the first sides and then I'm squaring up based on that. As you can see, I'm placing it straight against the mat, the lines on the mat, and then I'm just trimming the sides. So I'll do this for all 4 sides, and if you're making a pouch, you want to make sure that both of the panels are the same size. Okay, so now we're going into how to make crazy quilt blocks. This is another method to use Quilt As You Go panels. So I'm using this triangle pieces, and some of them are not really a perfect triangle, but I usually keep this in a plastic bag separate from the squares because they're harder to use. But for this crazy block, this is the time for you to use them. So let's say we have this crazy piece. You just simply put it in the center and we're going to start working around this shape. Now, you're going to work with some of the strips, some of the small pieces, or some of the pieced ones, or even some of the triangles as well. So you want to make the first side that you want to cover first all covered by the new piece that you're going to put over. So it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned on the edges, as you can see from here. As long as it covers the whole edge, raw edge is fine. So I'm just working around the edges, seeing any free edges. I'm going to cover it with a new piece and making sure that the new piece that I'm putting on is larger than the edge size. So it doesn't have to be the right shape, just to cover the raw edges. And I'm just using a 1/4 inch and just flipping it over, opening it, and taking a new piece and just put it on. So you can work with strips, you can work with triangles, whatever you wish to do. The more varieties will create a more interesting panel, and you simply have fun. As you reach to the edges, you want to have all of the edges covered, and I like to use again bigger triangles to put here, just so that you can make use of those larger triangles. If you don't have a large enough triangles, just work on with whatever you have first until you get to the very corner pieces that you can cover with the triangle. This is just to ensure that you don't have too much waste at the edges, and it's also a good use to make use of the scraps. Okay, again, same thing for this panel. I am going to trim up into a square corners. So I am just going to be looking at the back side of this piece. I have 2 of them and I want to make sure that they are both the same size because I'm going to make a pouch out of them. So I want to square up the corners, and I will try to cut the closest to the edge as possible if I can get any of them squared up that way, just so that I don't waste as much. So you can trim all the 4 sides and making sure that both panels are the same size. Alright, now we're into method 3. So this is going to be a strip set blocks where we're going to just piece strips. Now, in order for us to make use of all the small ones, I actually piece them into longer strips so that I can make use of them. So I just press and roll with my roller so that the seams are flat. So we'll start with 1 batting squares here. And I'll just start putting all my strips next to each other and just start to look at whether they cover the whole area of the batting, and if they do not, I'm trying to actually just use some of the wider ones so that it covers the whole area from top to bottom so that I don't have to add in anymore. So this is what I'm going to be doing for this piece. I'm going to just add strips next to each other. I'm going to start from the left hand side and start putting right sides together and piecing with a 1/4 inch seam. So I try to avoid overlapping the seams that's already in between while we piece the little pieces. And if you find that a lot of your pieces will overlap in the seam, what I would do is just take a longer strips that has no piecing in it and just put it in between so that you don't have that overlapped seams in between, because it can add up to the bulk of the whole piece. So I'm just going to go ahead till the end, and at the end I'm going to make sure that I'm covering the whole area instead of using a small piece. That way you don't have this little tiny piece when you actually trim it up. So once you're done with that, let's get trimming. Now we're into the last quilt as you go panel for this tutorial. This is going to be the strips set. So if you want to work with this one, I suggest you have like a big strips, bold strip that you want to highlight. So in this case I have this, and I cut it to the length that is going to be wider than my batting strip piece. And then I'm going to use all these tiny bits in the middle. So it's kind of like a contrast, tiny small pieces and then big strips. It's just one way to kind of use up all these tiny bits without having to piece them. So I'm going to start in the middle. So if you are particular about being straight, you want to kind of measure it a little bit, but I'm just eyeballing it, and I'm just using all these tiny little pieces to create a strip set, a colorful strip set in the middle, and I'm just going to piece them all the way to the other end. So right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch. So once you're done with that, you want to go ahead and pick the bold strips that you picked and make sure that they are the whole length, and it's going to put just above the strip set that you just made in the middle. So the scrappy strips, and you want to make sure that it is covering the whole seam area all the way to the other end. So it doesn't matter that it's not straight, the strips that we just made on the batting, but once we just sew this down, it's going to be straight enough, right? And we're going to cover all those wonky edges of the seams allowance. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, right sides together and 1/4 inch away from the seams of my strip piece. Once you open it, you want to go ahead and fill it up. I use 2 strip sets here, and I just sandwich it together just to create that effect of having those bold strips. Of course, you can use more than 2 strips, so it depends really back in your batting size as well. So we're done with that. So that's our last panel and we're ready to go and make a pouch. For the pouch, you will need 2 lining pieces that is going to be the same size as your panel, and then I'm going to have this small piece to make the end of the zipper, and you want to choose a zipper that is longer than the width of your pouch, just so that we can make a open wide pouch, so that it can opens wide and you can actually look inside. And I'm going to make a zipper end using this small piece. Let's get started. So for the zipper end, you want to go ahead and press the raw edges, 1 or 2 of the opposite raw edges together, and then fold it 1 more time in the middle, backward. Now this is right side facing together because you're going to make kind of a pocket for the zipper to go in, but the seam is going to be inside so that you don't have any rough edge seams that you have to deal with later. So I'm going to sew just about the size of the zip. You can mark this, but I'm just eyeballing it again. I really want to make this like quick gift, so that's why I'm just like doing it. But if you feel like you need to measure, do what you need to do. So I am putting that, and then I'm just going to make sure that my zipper will fit in. So I am going to stitch a little bit more off. So you want to have like some leeway, because when you turn it around, you'll have seams to kind of not exact size of the zipper, what I mean. Okay, and then you want to trim up. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm trimming it up and cutting the corners off so that you have a sharper corner. And now you can just turn it around to the right side and hook it a little bit so that you get a very sharp corner. There you have it, your zipper end is ready. So I'm gonna have to put this in. As you can see, you want to have this zipper end actually closes up to a little bit away from the metal part. So you don't want to sew on the metal part. You kind of feel it with your fingers or your nails, and you want to make a square and just sew this down. So that's what I'm doing. So I also make sure that the zipper part, the metal bit of the zipper, is away from the needle. You want to make sure that you're doing it safely, because otherwise you can break your needle. And if you're using metal zipper, be slow and use the hand crank instead. So there you go, make it neat, and we're ready to piece it to our panel. So let's start with your panel. If you have any direction that you want to make sure that is upright or something, let's say in this case, I'm gonna put my zipper right sides together, so like that, with the outer panel. Okay, so right sides together with the outer panels, and I'm gonna use the top of that zipper aligning with the edge of my outer piece, and then I'm gonna take my lining and put it on top, and I'm gonna pin this in place. You can use pins or clips, whatever you prefer. Sometimes I use pins, sometimes I use clip, whatever is easy for me to kind of grab around my sewing space. At this point, I usually like to check whether the zipper is put in right, so you can flip it a little bit as well, just to see what it would look like if it was sewn down, because you don't want to have to unpick later on as well. Sometimes we do make mistake. We have the zipper in the wrong side, or sometimes we have the wrong layers piled together, so you just want to make sure that you're doing it right. Now at the edge, because we're going to make an open wide zipper pouch, you want to take this away from the edge. So what I do is normally just pull it away so that this end part of the zipper is not going to be sewn down in the layers. So it's going to be taken away from the sandwich, and when you sew that 1/4 inch, it's not going to sew that at a 1/4 inch end. So you just want to kind of pull it away. You can see in the shadows there, it's actually just there. So when you stitch, it's going to be there, and you're going to have a free end basically, and that's what you need for the open zipper, the open wide zipper. So now it's just about sewing a 1/4 inch away again from one edge to the other edge, and making sure that all the layers are stuck together, so you can pin and clip as much as you need to, and go slow. As you reach the zipper, I'm using a walking foot, so I'm just feeling the bones of the zipper, and I'm just sewing away from that center pin. And once you reach the head of the zipper, what you want to do is pick up your foot and pull the head of the zipper all the way out, away from the foot, so that you can have a smooth transition and finish off the seams. Sewn it right, so you should be able to have this free end for the zipper, and that's going to be outside of the pouch so that we can have an open wide pouch. Now we're going to do the other side. So just make sure that you see all of the zipper is free and have no stitches on them, so that you have a smooth zipper closure. Now we're going to put right sides together to the zip and turn it around and put the lining in, just as we did with the first one, and then clips and sew a 1/4 inch again. Again, at the end, focusing on letting that zipper be to the side, just so that you have that free end for the zipper. So once you're done with that, you should have a piece that looks like this. You have the outer pouch, a free end zipper, and lining inside. So we want to go ahead and press this and top stitch before we close everything together. To close the pouch, so what we want to do is pick the lining, right sides together, and the outer pouch, the panel, right sides together. And for this, because we have already top stitched near the zipper, what we want to do is just pull that little seams towards the outer part. So that's what I'm doing here. So the zip is facing, the seam is actually facing the outer panel. And want to match the seams there and clip it in place. And then you do it all the way around the pouch. So we clip this one in place, matching the seams. You can use clips or pins. Sometimes I like to use pin because it just stays well. And then you're going to match it all the way to the other end. So the most important one is this too. So for the end of the zipper that is free, you want to push it against the outer panel. So keep it inside there and pin this in place. And then we're going to sew all the way around, leaving a gap in the lining piece so that we can actually open or turn it back around. Now just before we sew all the way around, you want to make sure that the zipper is half open or all the way open, so that we can turn it all around again later on. Otherwise, it's hard for you to kind of turn the piece around. now it's time to turn it around. Make sure that your zipper was open before you sew everything down. And we want to trim the corners so that we have a sharper edge. And we do that for all the 4 corners. And then we just turn it around through the middle. I also trimmed a little bit at the bottom because I find that when I was pinning, it was a little bit off. So I just want to make sure that it's trimmed closer to the seam. And trim the one at the center where the zipper is, because this is the most bulk. And that's how I do it. I just thin it a little bit, just make the seams thinner. Just be careful not to kind of cut through your stitches. And we're almost done. So turn it around, use the pokey thing to actually get all the corners right, and we are done. Your first zipper pouch is done. You can make all of the same pouch with all the different panels that you've made. It's going to make a fun gift, and I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure you click the like and subscribe, and make sure you actually sew down the closure of the lining. I just do this using my machine, but you can also hand sew them if you want to have a nicer look. But for me, it's the lining. I'm just going to just use the machine, whatever's quick. Sometimes we need to make quick gifts, and these are perfect for quick gifts. I hope you make some of these, and if you do, please tag me on Instagram. I am Amira at the Little Mushroom Cap, or comment down below in the blog post and let me know what you think of this pouch tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you click like and subscribe.